Welcome to Down to Earth Astrology and Primal Girl Wellness. This is Miss Jenny, and I am your astrologer. And today, for Astrology Investigates, we are doing the natal chart and the year ahead solar return or birthday horoscope for Mr. Tucker Carlson. For those of you following along, this is his chart. Mr. Carlson was born May 16th, 1969, in San Francisco, California, at 10:07 a.m. Mr. Carlson carries some unique configurations in his chart, and especially some unique events that have happened for his birthday, which in this particular case is an eclipse and a particularly gnarly Saturn involving this eclipse. And we're watching it play out right in front of us. Let's start here. Mr. Carlson has the Sun conjunct the fixed star known for hysteria and losing one's head, Algol. His moon is at the last degree of Taurus. Both of these planets are in Taurus. The moon is the last degree, conjunct the fixed star, the Pleiades, or what is also known as the Weeping Sisters. Now, both of these planets, this new moon is opposing his natal Neptune, which is retrograde in the 5th house. There's some stuff here for sure. There is definitely some stuff here. His Mercury, his moon is exalted. His Mercury is in rulership. He's got a very strong Mercury. Mercury is at 11 Gemini, or just about 12 Gemini, a couple minutes off. 11 degrees 58 minutes, or 12 Gemini if you want to round up, in the 11th house. He has Cancer rising, which makes the moon conjunct the fixed star Pleiades, or the Weeping Sisters, the ruler of his chart. And this is going to be important in how we delineate this. The part of fortune is at 28 Cancer in his first house. This provides him with tremendous benefits, material benefits in life. Now, I will say the challenge with part of fortunes, when you look at this in your chart, is that the part of fortune can give you one of two things. It can either give you material benefit or it can give you greater spiritual reward. It's kind of like an either or situation. And it largely depends on which brass or gold ring you're reaching for when you're riding around the carousel. So the choice is yours, how you want this to manifest in your life. Short-term gain versus long-term gain, right? But ultimately, it is a beneficial mathematical part that plays out in different ways depending on whether it's by transit in the natal or with somebody else's part of fortune. Now he carries it in his first house, which is very fortunate. With his chart, he needs it. Okay, he has Venus at the very top of his chart at 15 Aries. Venus is the dispositor of that new moon, which makes that Venus even more important. Mars is at 14 Sagittarius retrograde. It is trining that Venus from the 5th house. Jupiter is at 26 Virgo, conjuncting Pluto at 22 Virgo, and Uranus at 0 Libra. It's widespread there, but we're still counting it. And all three of these planets are retrograde in the 3rd house of the lower mind. And we'll talk about that too. Saturn, that big old gnarly, nasty Saturn that everybody just loves finding in their chart. His is, unfortunately for him, in Taurus in that 10th house. Now, the reason this is unfortunate is that Taurus Scorpio placements for Saturn are not fun at all, because they're very much about survival and values. So when you have Saturn placements in Taurus and Scorpio, oftentimes, well, your ability to support yourself or your materialism or your greed, or pick a thing that involves material resources and or shared resources, becomes a very, very complicated and important issue in your life. Because if you do it right, you've got happiness and security and peace of mind through most of your life, no matter what happens. If you do it wrong, then oftentimes all of these things that Taurus represents or Scorpio represents, which often on the lowest end is money and material wealth, all that gets ripped away from you. And then you don't even have other support systems to hold you up in place of that absence. And also too, there's a hollow feeling in your heart because you've totally missed the point of having resources, which is to build a solid, sustainable, stable platform with which to nourish and nurture the people you care about around you. When you do it wrong, you've got all the platforms, but you've got no one around you because you've done them wrong the entire time, placing things as a greater priority than people. There's some stuff there. At some point, we'll do a video about some of these Saturn placements. His north node, interestingly enough, is at 27 Pisces. Now, his south node is down here with Jupiter and Pluto in Virgo, closer to Jupiter. And the thing with these particular nodes is that the north node in Pisces, anybody who carries north node in Pisces, is coming from a previous lifetime where they were highly analytical, very what counts as what I see in front of me, and very hyper rational. They don't believe in meditation and prayer and cosmic intervention and divine guidance. They don't believe in any of that hokey, hoodoo, voodoo, invisible man stuff. They believe in literally what's literally in front of them. They like things they can measure. They like things they can see, count, dissect, analyze, break apart, put back together again. And if they can't do that, then it doesn't exist as far as they're concerned. The other side of that is that with North Node Pisces, your North Node is always going to be more challenging for you to do because it's the direction you're supposed to work on developing yourself, developing those skills that and abilities that and strengths that come under the sign ruled and the house placement by your North Node. If you don't know where your houses are, it's okay. The sign alone is a lot of information. People with North Node and Pisces have, in this lifetime, a very real evolutionary demand that requires them to get in their faith, to get into less physical and more humanitarian or spiritual goals and ambitions and views, perspectives, right? So it's literally they're here to open up their higher mind and to see bigger pictures, one that encompasses all of humanity, alleviating the suffering of other people and lifting people out of misery. That Pisces trip, man, it's not easy. It's not easy because you can have all your physical material stuff, but at the end of the day, oftentimes you're going to find yourself coming to crossroads where you have to decide how you're going to approach a situation and whether you're going to do the obvious, logical, lumbersome kind of literal in your face sort of solution, or if you're going to trust that this will be a better outcome if you just take a risk. What is it? A risk of faith in someone or something and aim for a higher goal or aim for being the better person in a situation. North Node Pisces is tough because that South Node in Virgo is really, really hyper-analytical and hyper-rational. Those people are difficult to talk to about this stuff. Now with him, he's got that South Node with Jupiter and Pluto in that third house. Whee! And, the Uranus is there too. So let's maybe say Jupiter Uranus. So that's actually the North Node is the South Node is closer to that. So in this particular case, we've got somebody who is hyper-rational to the nth degree. Da, da, da. Wow, what a pain. The other thing too, what's interesting about this is the South Node can often weaken or drag us back. Because the South Node represents a couple of things. One, it represents things that you're good at or that are easy for you because it's a past life thing. You've done this before. If you've done it before, of course, it's easier the second, third, fourth, 12th time around. The other thing is that South Node softens things. So the South Node's kind of like dissolvent, right? It just kind of literally softens and dissolves things. With the South Node conjuncting planets in this third house, there would have been some issues with probably attention span, maybe even vision issues. I would bet you good money he's got vision issues and certainly had them when he was very young. There would have also been with the South Node and Jupiter, Pluto, and Uranus like this, Uranus and Leo, all these planets retrograde. There also would have been issues with siblings or I'm thinking, yeah, see, there's something, I don't want to get too much into this because this doesn't look good. There were a few things that happened in his early childhood that were not okay, that he is still, I'm sure he's still carrying around with him. Now, whether he's worked through this or not is a whole other story. With the South Node there, with these planets, this almost guarantees that this is, if you believe in past lifetimes, this was a karmic inheritance and he needed to go through this experience again because he's processing something or he's working through something. But there's some stuff here that was huge. And it may not necessarily, because it's the third house, it may not necessarily have even been something that happened to him. This could have been something he witnessed as a child. And in this lifetime, he's got to make sense of that, and it's hard to make sense of anything when you're a kid, right? So it's entirely possible that he saw something very unsavory or a lot of inappropriate things when he was in grade school ages. And that has had a very, very serious impact on the way he views the world and, why he desperately needs to get out of the physical world and the material world and into a more enlightened, heart-centered, loving, humanitarian kind of place with that North Node in Pisces. He may never get there, but we don't know. Also, too, the nodes for him are in the third and ninth house. In this lifetime, he is meant to be a teacher, believe it or not. He has difficulty studying. It's not that he has short attention span theater like some of us do. With that Jupiter, Pluto, South Node trining the Sun Moon in his chart in Taurus, he gets tunnel vision. So the problem is he can burrow in deep, like, to the other side of the earth, through the middle, kind of burrowing. on any particular subject, which is what we call a rabbit hole. He can rabbit hole into anything. And the problem is when he does that, he loses perspective because he doesn't see or hear anything else. So he can dig himself deep, deep, deep into a rabbit hole, following things that are not helpful because whatever is down there, you're still up here, you got to live. And also, too, the whole point of learning and education is not only about sharing information, but also being open and flexible to the addition of new information that gives us a better, more clear perspective because we didn't have that information before now. With this particular aspects for him, that Jupiter, Pluto, Sun, Moon with a Taurus, Virgo, South Node, it's going to be very difficult for him. Like literally, once he's made up his mind, that's it. And there's no, oh dear God, there's no changing his mind. He's literally like a flat earther. I'm not saying he's a flat earther, but I'm saying he's like these flat earthers who absolutely will not be convinced that the earth is not in fact flat. They know, they've seen the videos, they've read the books. It is flat. Australia's a hoax. Bless their hearts. And so if you've ever had the delight of having conversations with these people about whether the world is actually flat or not, it's really clear that there's nothing you're going to say that's going to change their mind because they will go deeper and deeper and deeper down that conspiracy rabbit hole the more you try to pull them up. This is kind of the same thing that he has going on for him. So his attention span may have been questionable when he was younger, but only because he would tend to go off like on these wild hair chases on things and go down rabbit holes with it. The thing about it is he's got Uranus in that third house also, but Uranus is not making any aspects to that new moon, that sun moon conjunction. It's not really doing a lot of things. So it's not necessarily helpful. There are some issues here with the siblings as well. We're going to talk about that in a second. That is Tucker Carlson in a nutshell. Now, again, the thing that's particularly important about this, and the reason I'm doing his chart, is because he took this eclipse on his new moon in his birth chart. Remember, his sun and moon are both conjunct some pretty gnarly fixed stars. These are not happy fixed stars. They promise wealth, but they also promise a whole lot of devastation and catastrophe along with them. Just a lot of tears and sadness. He just took this eclipse on top of that new moon. Oh my God. And it's opposing his Neptune. And Saturn in this eclipse sets up a T-square in his chart. Or I'm sorry, the eclipse is on the sun and Neptune. And sun, moon, and Neptune. It's got literally this whole chart is lit up like a fireworks show. And the Saturn that is the fulcrum of the eclipse is obviously pulling in his new moon opposed Neptune. So there are some interesting things that we were looking at. And the thing is, it just happened on his birthday, which is carrying him into this whole year ahead. So this entire year, what we're seeing right now as his birthday opened up the year is a preview of what is going to continue moving forward in his life for the rest of the year. So imagine it's like, well, I hate to say it, but imagine it's like an avalanche. So you hear that little something breaking, in the silent tundra, that little break. And if you know what you're listening for, an avalanche is right behind it. So this eclipse, as messy as it is, this is the harbinger of an avalanche behind it. So, oh my Lord, I would not want to be him this year because this month is a preview. Good grief. Now, before I get into the natal chart interpretation and solar return, I just want to point out some things about the eclipse. So with this eclipse, it will fall in because we do have times of birth for him, it will fall in his 8th house. And his personal charts and the eclipse pattern is falling from his 11th to his 5th. This could represent a number of things. So the first thing I would say is the eclipse falling across that 5th, 11th house axis, involving his new moon with his really not great fixed stars, and Neptune, which is also retrograde in the 5th house. I am expecting issues with other children or love affairs. I wonder what's on his internet browsing history that will absolutely come out and be exposed because this was a full moon eclipse. So everything comes out in the open under this sort of thing. So lots of exposure here. With this new moon opposing Neptune in the natal chart, especially involving Taurus and Scorpio in the 5th and the 11th, and Neptune being retrograde. And again, I'm telling you, there's a whole lot of excuse my language, there's a whole lot of hinky stuff in this chart that I'm not going to get into because I am speculating, and there's no way for us to verify that this is true. Only he can validate or verify that what I'm seeing here is accurate. And also, too, if he doesn't validate it, someone else has to expose it. And, we'll know soon enough. But if it doesn't come out, it's not my place to speculate because, as with all things, no matter how educated or expert you are in something, ask a doctor sometime about that. You could be wrong. So we don't like to make too many guesses that are potentially harmful if they sound accusatory. But I will say there's definitely some stuff here. All right. So love affairs and children. social groups, people that he is socializing with, and also legal connections. There's some legal stuff happening with this all through the year as well that this is going to be connected to. That is happening as a result of the eclipse opening up that closet door. Saturn, which is the leg of this T-square and the troublemaker in this eclipse pattern, is coming out of his 8th house of shared resources. So his finances are going to be under the gun. There will be some there will be some tears. There will be some financial losses this year as a result of this eclipse pattern, very absolutely triggering these fixed stars, his new moon opposing Neptune, and also, all this shady stuff he's been very good at hiding coming out in the open, loud, proud, and right in your face, coming to a theater near you. And the thing about it is you would think like, well, if this has been going on, if there is in fact any shady stuff, has been going on for any length of time, like why now? Why not before now? I mean, it's not like he's 12. He's a grown man with plenty of time on his hands, and life lived. And I will say that, how these things go and how they're manifested in ways that we, the people who don't live inside his life with him, see it is limited, by what we're given in terms of information. The more money you have and the more influence and power you have, obviously, the more resources you have to cover your ass. And higher up the hierarchy, the higher up the ladder you go, the smaller the population gets. So if you've ever known people who've had money, one of the things that you'll know is that the more money you have, the less friends and peers that you have. So these are really tight, small, minuscule social circles the further up you go, right? Like Bezos and Jesus, what's his name? Musk, right? The Billionaire Boys Club, like at that stratosphere, and Virgin Atlantic, the owner, I forget his name too, but the Billionaires Boys Club, like at that level, there's such a tiny, tiny, tiny population. They all know each other. They all know each other. They're all friendly with each other. And even if they absolutely detest each other's politics and whatever else they're doing in their personal life, Jeffrey Epstein, Prince Andrew, even if they detest what these people are doing in their personal lives, the fact of the matter is it's a tiny pool of people that they can socialize with and have connections with and share resources with. So they'll overlook and tolerate a lot of things, and they will also cover each other or give each other cover when necessary if they can do it. I mean, this is no different from people down at the bottom rungs. It's just that at the bottom rungs of the ladder, there are so many of us that the little pockets of protection and socialization where we'll overlook a lot of stuff because we kind of need to, because if we don't do that, we're out on our own, and we won't have the things that these people can give us that help us when we need it. We do the same thing. It's just that you don't notice it as much because there's so many of us. Like we call those people our friends, right? Yo, buddy, you're my family, because we're operating in a much larger pool of people that don't care about us or don't have shared interests in self-protection. There's no mutual self-destruction with that many people at that level down here, except in your little teeny tiny circle that you create around yourself. But up there, that circle of self-protection, it's all self-destruct from here if nobody's careful. Mutual self-destruction at that level, it literally only takes one, and then the whole row of dominoes goes because they're all connected to each other because there's so few of them at that level. All of this is to say that whoever Tucker Carlson is tight with, because this is his level on the ladder, like I guarantee you it's a small group, and they're all just like the Republicans and the politicians and Democrats. There's a distinct interest in avoiding mutual destruction. So they all give each other cover, even if they don't agree with their politics or their personal lifestyle choices. Cough, cough. Jeffrey Epstein, cough, cough. Not all of them are like that, because again, the more spread out you get, the more people you get on board, like the more dilute the playing field becomes and the less obvious it is. But I guarantee with this one, he's up there. And also too, like with this kind of Taurus and the part of fortune operating the first house, and that Venus conjunct the 10th, dispositing that Sun Moon conjunction in Taurus, and with Saturn in Taurus, he's a classist. This guy's an elitist. It's so funny to listen to him talk about, the elitists are out to get you. Honey, you are an elitist. You are such an elitist. You make Trump look like the common man. Oh my God, honey, you've never met a bigger snob. You've never met a bigger snob. But I suppose it's because nobody ever actually meets him in person, and they only ever see him on TV that they don't see that. But chart says it clearly. This guy's a huge snob. Ooh, talk about classism. So as the year rolls on, let's see how this plays out. That Saturn is really the roosters are coming home to roost with this, and I would not want to be him. Now, Saturn here rules his 7th house, so there are some issues with contract partnerships that we're going to talk about as well, where this solar return on the eclipse is concerned. So for now, let's get to the chart. Okay, so things you should probably know that you would only know if you actually knew Tucker in person is that he is self-centered and selfish. Tucker will always have a hard time sharing with other people or putting other people's needs first unless there's something in it for him and with a greater gain. You can thank that new moon in Taurus, disposited by Venus and Aries, for that. Now, he does have a gift of gab and he can talk circles around most people when he's in trouble. His standard operating procedure is to talk circles around you until you're so confused that you can't even clearly remember what your original issue was or even what your points were. Pinning him down with facts and in writing or recording so you can't dispute it, point by point and line by line is the only way to get this character to admit to anything. And even then, just like contract agreements, he will literally try to find the one loophole or even a pinhole in a sentence anywhere to use as a fulcrum to try and make an opening for him somewhere else that he can escape through. So he will double down. Oh my God, double down in the face of complete lunacy. Like he will literally deny reality and double down to protect himself. I think they call that gaslighting. Now, his greatest defense is his tireless ability to keep going over familiar ground and wear down his opponent through sheer exhaustion and tedious futility at fighting the same fights repeatedly, even though it's clear that by rights, Tucker has already lost that ground. Tucker does not concede until he runs out of energy to run his mouth. Literally, he will not stop arguing his point and defending himself and denying until he is exhausted. Like when he finally gives up, it's only because he run out of energy, not because he is actually admitting to anything. He's not a very physical person, and he's not a physical combatant. He's more like a machine gun that rapid fires an indiscriminate spray of words at high volume until you give up or he runs out of ammunition. And by the way, he is the king of gaslighting. Matt Gaetz has the same qualities with this rapid fire, distracting, dancing around the subject until you just give up because you're tired of like going around circles. But the difference is that Tucker Carlson isn't nearly as light on his feet when it comes to dancing around allegations and accountability. Gaetz is more like a frenetic monkey flinging poo in all directions and screeching until you go away. Carlson is more like a machine gun on a tank driving toward you slowly and surely with very little deviance in his trajectory. Carlson, in that way, is predictable. Gaetz is not. Both, however, are dangerous to the people around them for the same and different reasons. Now, some other things you should probably know about Tucker that definitely would know if you lived with him or you knew him personally. Tucker lives in his own little island of reality. Escapism and addiction, interestingly enough, are lifelong issues for him. And those addictions may also include, I thought this was interesting, they may also include degrading or violent pornography. Like some other men, his chart shows that he has an active and troublesome predilection for adolescence and innocence as a possibility, but it's mostly troublesome if he has no self-control or moral restraint. And in this way, I will say it is unfortunate, but he shares that with a lot of men in this day and age. It doesn't make it good, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it okay, but there it is. And for him, it is more pronounced and problematic. So this may be something that comes up as a real issue before his life is over. Also, again, he's not a physical person. He prefers the world of ideas and minds. He likes thoughts, ideas, words. And it's no accident that he was an English major because that Mercury in Gemini, he loves wordplay. And he's not physical. So there you go. I don't know too many football scholarship people who were English majors. Just saying. All right. So now here's the thing, though. If that's a big if he must get involved with a physical activity or a physical sport, he would rather gravitate towards outdoor things that allow him to lean heavily on his endurance and or short bursts of energy to gain a lead and then fall back. So he's good coming out of the gate with a lot of force, but it's short-lived. He doesn't have a lot of stamina, or at least he doesn't have he's got a good power burst in the beginning, but then he's got to be able to pace himself at a much slower pace in order for him to keep doing something. Fishing would be a great sport for him. I'm sure he loves fishing. And probably like deep sea fishing, something that requires a little bit more physical strength, a little bit more macho, because it requires more effort to like reel things in. So I can totally see him on one of those big boats out in the sea, like deep sea fishing with a giant fish. Because it's, endurance. Like how long can you sit in the sun drinking beer, waiting for something? And then you got to fight with this monster to get in the boat, which takes, some macho strength. But also a lot of endurance because you'll be fighting with that beast for a while before he gives up and gets in that boat with you. I'm just saying. I don't know. I'm just saying. Maybe you know. If you know, tell me. Now, here's something interesting, and this is literally just speculation, so don't hold me to it. And I probably shouldn't even put it out there, but I thought it was interesting and I thought you might be entertained. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to tell you what I think I see in this chart and what I think I'm seeing here. And listen, only him and his mother and his doctor is going to be able to attest to this. Tucker may have scars or healed wounds of some kind around his genitalia, resulting or that have occurred in his first year of life. And the only thing I can think of that might make sense is some kind of issue with the circumcision if he is circumcised, maybe, or he might be underdeveloped in that region somehow. Not saying he's underendowed, underdeveloped. There's difference. Whatever it is, there's some kind of unusual issue here, I think. I could be wrong. Don't hold me to it. I'm just saying. Also, too, it looks like there's the strong possibility that his biological mother may have nearly lost her life during birth, or Tucker may have had difficulty breathing upon his entry into the world. And also, it looks like infections would have been a constant source of concern during his first 6 months of life. And again, only his mother and his doctor would know about this, so we have no way of verifying if any of that's actually accurate. Some things that came up that I was wondering about looking at this chart. Does Tucker's brother have autism? So I looked it up. I only know of, I actually didn't even know he had brothers, but apparently Tucker has two brothers. And are you ready for this? They're both named Buckley. Who does this? So there's a, I don't even understand how that works. There's a Buckley Tucker, who is his biological brother. And then there's a Buckley Swanson Peck Tucker, who is the child of his stepmother, right? So his father divorced, remarried, and the woman he remarried to had a child with him, who she then promptly named it also Buckley. Right? Now, one of the brothers has an aeronautics degree and would appear to be the sympathetic and supportive brother according to the chart. According to online sources, this is the only brother that Tucker also mentions in any kind of discussion. He never talks about his other brother. It's only the biological brother he ever mentions if it comes up. Now, the other one, the half brother, born from his stepmother, Patricia Swanson, if I'm reading this chart correctly, would appear to be an embarrassment for Tucker and the source of, you ready for this? Much karmic debt and retribution. There are debts to be paid here and karmic lessons to be learned as a result of this sibling relationship with his brother. Again, we don't know what that is or how that works out, but that's what it shows here. So my question is Buckley Swanson Peck Tucker autistic or neurodivergent? Like there's something wrong. Well, all right, I'm going to go ahead and say it. There's something not right about this particular brother. There's something really off, like off center, off kilter. That makes him extremely socially awkward. So I don't know what that is. And obviously nobody else is telling us. Tucker doesn't even admit to having the brother if he doesn't have to. I want to add to that, there is very little information here, and Patricia Swanson Tucker's birth date, the stepmother, is conspicuous in its absence from the internet. I looked because I'm trying to determine what her age was and probable complications there might have been when she gave birth to Buckley Swanson Peck Tucker, that may be contributing to this oddity in the way he functions. Because listen, there is a reproductive window that you have to honor, and you start getting out of that, whether you're male or female, you're inviting all sorts of problems with that birth and the genetics, and like you're not producing the strongest, healthiest babies when you're tired old behind has decided middle age is a great time to start being a parent. Whee! Okay. Anyway, so all of this to say, there's something about this one brother, and we can't find very much information about him, and Tucker never talks about him or any issues. So I'm fascinated and curious what the deal is with that other brother, the other Buckley. Now, some history you may or may not be aware of with Tucker. I thought this is kind of interesting, and I want to talk about this. So the family story is that Tucker's biological mother abandoned him and his brother when he was 6 years old. It is said that his father remarried to Patricia Swanson, the Swanson Dinner Foods heiress, 4 years later when he was 10 years old. Looking at the chart, the timing, there's something more important happening. Something happened prior to the divorce. His biological mother divorcing the father. Something happened prior to that when he was about 4 or 5 years old. So at 4 or 5, something huge happened. And then at 6 is when his mother left the household. Whatever happened at age 4 or 5 had a profound impact on him. And more importantly, this would involve both his parents and should have. I don't know how this works, but it looks like it also gave him some material benefit or blessing as part of its outcome. I mean, maybe a grandparent died or something. Unfortunately, whatever happened at age of 4 or 5 was also something that precipitated his parents' divorce, which, by the way, and again, there's no information. We can't find anything on the internet anyway. That particular divorce would have been messy, oh, so messy and scandalous. There's a whole lot of dirt and skeletons in that pile. Now, the information we do have is that Tucker's mother is portrayed by him as bohemian and a free spirit who abandoned her children. And that's, that's it's an interesting take and perception of your mother and what happened. And remember, he was 6 when this happened. So, 6-year-olds don't process information the same way adults do. And also, too, as the child of a messy divorce and probably a really hostile one, there's just a lot in terms of molding your thinking as you grow up and you try to make sense of this as you get older. So, and some people never really quite get to that point where they can see anyway. So here's what I wanted to add because I thought this was pertinent and interesting for everybody, not just him. Since his parents' divorce occurred in 1975, this was a time when women were not able to utilize court systems to pursue child support and divorced women were still seen as social pariahs. Literally, if you were a divorced woman, you were not only personally defective because you couldn't keep a man, you were literally seen as the, wild, out of control, and dangerous threat to everybody else's marriage because clearly you were a whore. Excuse my language, but that's literally the way the thinking went. Divorced women were seen as free game for, all these predatory men who bought into this stereotype and this social belief that everybody kind of this scarlet letter, kind of thing they brand on women for being divorced, as being ready, accessible, and available to everybody because they were no longer virgins and they were not married. So you were single and not a virgin, woohoo, free game. Oh my God, it was bad. It's just really bad. And also, well, there's a whole thing about the society at the time in the United States in the 70s and also in other parts of the globe. But we're getting way too into the history here. But that is absolutely a dynamic that would have been happening when Tucker's biological mother was leaving the marriage. So this would have been very difficult for her just from the get-go, even if her ex-husband had been a nice guy, which I'm telling you, I don't think he was. Also, in situations like that in the 70s, if you're a woman getting divorced, the only way you could safely leave a marriage, you need to know this, the only way you could safely leave a marriage and not end up with literally a giant parade of problems from everybody, from being able to find employment, being able to find safe housing, being able to live in peace without, predatory people showing up at your door at all hours of the day and night, propositioning you on your job. It was just horrible, right? And then not being able to have any friends because women don't want you near them. God forbid you take their husband. The only way a woman in the 70s could safely divorce her husband and not end up with a bigger parade of problems than the marriage she was leaving is if she had another husband waiting the wings to go to. So literally, if you were not leaving your husband to go to another marriage immediately, you were asking for nothing but humongous problems. So there's that. Oh my God. Ugh. I'm so glad we don't live there anymore. Now, keep that in mind. Keep that picture in mind of what the 70s was like for women trying to get divorced or get out of bad marriages. So you don't have access to child support. You're seen as a social pariah. You're literally given this scarlet letter A because you're no longer a virgin and you're not married. Therefore, you're a free game for every predatory personality on the planet, at home and at work, if you can find jobs, and you're not going to have any friends because women aren't going to want you near their men because in their mind, because the only way you could safely leave a marriage is to have another man waiting for you. In their mind, if you're divorced, you're clearly on the prowl looking for a replacement husband because you can't be out here by yourself. It's not safe. Yeah. Oh my God, what a time. So while all this is going, have I painted a picture for you? While all this is going on, in addition, remember, Tucker's father had many powerful and influential connections in government agencies and professionally. Go take a look at his father's resume. And this was in a world that was still tightly in the fraternal old boys club on many levels. And because of the disproportionate power imbalance between the two of them, socially, professionally, personally, at that time in life, in the world, this would have made it impossible for his biological mother to have a fair or righteous battle for custody. So keep that in mind. Now, if we go down, knowing what we do about how poorly people behave when divorce and child custody is involved. Now, think about people you've known, maybe you've gotten divorced and had a messy divorce. Think about how badly people behave when divorce and child custody are involved. these days. Now imagine that it was 100 times worse in the 70s, because that was also when the first wave of divorces, not the anomalous one here or there that was the exception, but like waves of divorces started happening. And because there was no model for how to do it better, these divorces were as dysfunctional as possible. The thing about it is that Tucker is obviously very protective of both his parents. You can see it in the chart and you hear it in his voice. But if the young boy was living with his father, who could have easily been so toxic as a partner that the mother decided leaving the marriage by divorce was preferable to leaving by suicide, his father could have been that bad. We don't know. We didn't live with him, and we certainly aren't his biological mother. May she rest in peace. I believe she's dead now. Well, you can imagine that the story he gave, the father gave Tucker and his brother, the story he gave them to protect his own, to protect himself, basically, and his own refusal to hold himself accountable for his contributions to this marriage failing would have been things like, well, it's all your mother's fault. She abandoned us. It's okay. You've got me. We'll get through this together. She wasn't capable of being a good mother because she's so, she's just wants to go live her life and blah, 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 blah. Like, oh my God. Listen, we've all heard these things. And even today, when folks get divorced badly, we still hear, variations of this, right? Although now it's typically drug addiction that people use. What is notable is that in this marriage, the probability of addiction on the father's part is very high. Oh, there's a surprise. We don't know. This is speculation, but and of course we're limited to the information we can find. But my guess is there's addiction on the father's part, and in conjunction with that, the probability of addiction or mental health issues like suicidal depression that were high on the mother's part. I don't think either one of these were good candidates for marriage or parenting. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Again, we don't know. This is all speculation looking at a chart. All of this is to say that there is likely much more here than Tucker's ever going to admit to, because his wounded child ego was probably traumatized repeatedly with the events leading up to the divorce itself, and the shameless gaslighting and savior complex that the father probably committed afterwards with his children. We'll never know, but that's what's seen here. And it is significant because I think this time of his life and this thing with the mother and the marriage and the parents and the gaslighting and all the stuff that we're not privy to, and the absolute demand of allegiance to him for the father, from his sons. Remember, everybody gets divorced pretty much the same way when it's a messy divorce. We know how this works. So his father's not a saint. He's not immune to being a bad divorced parent. All of these things would absolutely play into Tucker's psyche and worldview now, as these things would for anybody. So there you go. Food for thought. I thought that was interesting. I thought I'd share it with you, because clearly it's very important to him as well. It's part of his story. Everybody's got their story about who they are and how they got to be where they are, and this is definitely a key component in his story and or how he views himself. Now, are there good things here? Well, there's lots of good things here. So now Tucker does have the ability to put people at ease when he wants to, but he also has a greater ability to play on your weaknesses and manipulate them. Remember, Tucker is a me first personality, first, foremost, and always. Now, he does this in his personal relationships as well as with his public persona, this whole making people comfortable and putting them at ease and, playing on their weaknesses just so he can manipulate them for his personal game. He specifically selects people who will be the most beneficial to his selfish aims and will most easily be charmed by his superficial allegiance to their deepest, ready, fears and concerns. He learned this ability from somewhere. It wasn't from his biological mother. May have been from the stepmother, may have been from the father, may have been from his peers, but he developed this to a brilliant talent into his adulthood. Do people do this all the time? Yes, but that doesn't mean they're good at it. He is absolutely genius when it comes to this type of tactic. Now, interestingly, with that in mind, if this is the case, his wife would have also been chosen for her gullibility. There are some men who literally look for women they can cheat on and lie to. They don't question him very much. And, there are some women who look for guys like that too. We all know who these people are. And Tucker definitely would have chosen her for her, air quotes, innocence, but mostly for her gullibility. Now, his strongest professional allies would be men who share his father's views of the world, views that Tucker adopts because it's easy for him, because he's familiar with them, and this makes it also easier for him to ally himself to older men in power who would have been around his father's age. So he literally speaks their language. He knows how they think, and playing into that. And remember, he plays on people's deepest fears and concerns, which he would be intimately aware of because he grew up with them. This is absolutely the type of professional men in power, older men in power, that he will look for to tuck himself under their wing, as it were, for them to mentor him. Cough, cough. Now, some things you should know about Tucker with all this Taurus and some of the other stuff in the chart, all these retrograde planets in third, he's not original, nor is he an innovator. He does not come up with new things. It's not in his nature. He is a air quotes, stick with what works until it won't work anymore, and then keep trying to resurrect some variation of it because it's what I know, and that's what we're going to do until something else works kind of guy. That's who he is. So he will always find the thing that works and he will stick with it. He will literally wear that thing down to the bone until there's nothing left. And when there's nothing left of that, he'll just keep trying to find variations of it, which are basically repeats of the same thing until he can find something that works and sticks. He will not give up on something that he's established that works for him ever, ever. He'll go to the grave with it because he doesn't innovate. He's not original and he's not an innovator. There's a lot of people like this. But again, these are striking key points with him that are very prominent in his presentation and his MOs in life. Some other things you should know is Tucker is also very, very competitive, and he always wants to be the center of attention and or the most important person in the room or closest to the most important person in the room. So he'll play second fiddle, but only to the absolute most important person. But even then, he wants to be the center of attention. So if you want somebody who's going to be the life of the party, that's Tucker is absolutely the person. If you want somebody who's not going to try and steal your thunder or the stage from you or your job, Tucker is not the person you want as your second in command because he's competitive and he wants to be top dog. He needs to be the center of attention, the absolute top of the heap. And if he has to sidle up underneath you to stand in your limelight to get some of that shine on him until he can push you off the pedestal, he'll do it. He'll do it. We know a lot of people like this, and so these configurations will show up and repeat in other people, but these are striking points that are coming up here. All right, so the other thing is that he hates being ignored. Oh my God, he hates being ignored almost as much as he hates being laughed at. Those two things alone will trigger him so badly, like it will literally send him around the bend in very irrational ways, because my suspicion looking at this chart is that he was most likely bullied a lot as a kid for being weird and or shamed to feel not as good as us by others. And if it wasn't him, this may have been something involving that one brother that's problematic. So that may have caused him some issues early on, which he never forgot, never got over. Because Taurus, Cancer rising and all that Taurus can hold a grudge like nobody's business. Never forget, never let go. That's their MO. Now, this is the solar return 2022. This is his birthday year, running from his birthday in 2022 to his birthday 2023. Year ahead horoscope for Tucker Carlson. All right, so his personal year starts out with a major come to Jesus moment, which is otherwise known as a moment of reckoning or, paying your karmic bill. Here's your bill, sir. The drive through this year will be to turn inward, retreat, and to move away from public life. The evolutionary catalyst driving this may be personal sacrifices. He carries a 12th house emphasis all year long, and this particular house is hard to predict. Breakdowns are always consistently the major trigger that begins this process of retreat, and that could be anything from a physical breakdown to a mental breakdown or to an external material one. Key months this year for his birthday year, May to June 2022. Tucker starts his birthday year with an eclipse on his birthday. This promises a complete disruption and dramatic change in his life circumstances that will be unavoidable. And since Saturn in Aquarius is involved and rules his 7th house, all contractual relationships from marriage to career may be exiting his life before the year is over. Given the 12th house emphasis this year, with this eclipse involving a Sun Moon opposed Neptune natal aspect and the fixed star Algol and Pleiades, he is susceptible to a major breakdown that will result in long-term hospitalization and medical management, or a long-term visit to rehab. Or he could decide to give it all up and join a spiritual group and drop out of life. Or he could fall down deeper in the rabbit hole and spend a new and significant amount of time with prisons and its inmates in some way. because the 12th house also rules prisons, in case you didn't know. A major change of fortune is heralded in the first month of this birthday year. So May to June, because his birthday's in the middle of the month of May. So it's May 15th, like June 15th, right? May, June are foreshadowing of things to come. A major challenge to his finances and his sense of identity is being presented as evolution is demanding that he let go of old, inauthentic versions of himself and begin to embrace the hard work necessary in embracing true values that are spiritually, not materially based. And given all that Taurus Scorpio in his chart, and with a Cancer rising part of fortune the first, getting him to give up any material, anything is tough. I mean, you may as well ask him to give up a kidney, right? He'd give the kidney up first. Other key months are June to July. In the months of June, July, now this should bring some relief for him. Protection and rescue may arrive at this time. Certainly a lifeline of support should appear. Possible new professional opportunities may appear at this time, providing the life raft needed to get through the current troubled waters. And believe me, those troubled waters starting in May are literally churning the ocean bed all through the year. All support at this time, however, will come through back channels and behind the scenes activity. All offers will likely involve communications and communications work, which is no one's surprised by that. Offers made at this time are significant, long-term, and solid. However, this is not the same thing as lucrative or respectable. But hey, any ship in a storm, right? Other key months this year will be August and September, or August, September/September. August, September are the months to watch, as Tucker will be under fire again, and the May activity should be brought back into full, sharp focus. So look for criticism and consequences of anything kicked up in May to land solid punches and potentially very permanent and public consequences or breaks. This month is particularly sensitive as any of the delusions, mental weaknesses, or infirmities, manipulation of truth, or misrepresentation of self will be given a thou shalt not pass decree until clarity is achieved. Ooh, going to be bringing a whole lot of truth telling to that table. And finally, closing out this birthday horoscope overview, because I have to keep this recording to under an hour. November, and then a block of January through April. November, December will take us to the halfway mark for his birthday year, and this is going to be a deeply personal and sensitive month for him. Deep and profound personal losses are possible and likely at this time. The months of January, February to April, May, that whole block, is significant. Now, January is a significant month from this cluster. Behind the scenes evolution into a new job and or a public announcement or launch associated with it are likely at this time. Possible large-scale deal or large partner problems. So could be good, could be bad, but whatever it is, it's going to be huge. Watch these months altogether to be a flurry of forward-moving and financially large situations to be placed front and center in his life. Just some sidebars here. This year, he's also carrying a Mercury and Venus return. Mercury is approaching and Venus starts out exact at its original placement. This means that in spite of all of the stormy things going on this month in May, his likability may actually be reinforced this year in spite of the obvious challenges, and also his communications, words, and agreements will be more emphasized than usual. Remember, this eclipse that he's taking on his natal planets, his natal new moon, opposing that Neptune, and with its Saturn there, good Lord, setting up the bear trap for him. This is operative all year long, and ultimately this eclipse promises us, guarantees us that his life will never look the same afterwards. So his entire life is about to get turned upside down and inside out and changed in ways that are going to make it unrecognizable from what it used to be. We'll give him that he's got some likability. He's going to need it. You can't get through life alone, right? And we're going to give that his communications and his ability to talk and stuff may be an asset, or maybe something that really becomes a problem because he's got Mercury conjunct the fixed star too. I'm trying to remember which one it was. Or is it the new moon? Sorry, I have so much information here. But one of the big challenges with this character is because of the placements of planets in his chart is he literally does not know when to shut up. He literally doesn't know when to quit he's ahead when it comes to his big mouth. And we're seeing that. And he goes down the rabbit hole, so he'll go down deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and get crazier and crazier and crazier and listen to less and less reason, and he'll keep talking the entire time. And literally, because he's got the horse blinders on, because he's in the rabbit hole, he's not reading the room. He's not seeing how this how this has an impact as it extrapolates outward away from him where those sound waves are reaching, but he's not seeing. Keep an eye on Tucker. He's going to be an interesting character watch as the year plays out. And certainly this month, May to June, will be big high points in terms of the chaos around him. And again, he's just a man. More important, he is the point man. So he's the flag bearer at the front of the parade. He's not the parade itself. So when you're out in front like that and you're the face of a movement or something, you are the target because you are symbolic of something. You represent something of a much larger scale. So right now he is the flag at the front of the parade, which means he's the most visible and he's also the most symbolic of what we're dealing with in terms of what that parade represents. So it will be interesting to see what happens to the symbol of that thing as this gets addressed and how people deal with that, because it clearly needs to come up, bubble up to the surface, into the forefront, and the Hydra needed to have the head cut off. So we'll see. We'll see. All right, folks, this has been Ms. Jenny. Have a great day, y'all. Bye.